Hey, Aaron, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Hey, just give us a brief introduction about you and your business.
Okay. I started real estate accidentally. I bought a house a townhouse in 2006. Lived in it for a couple of years. The market went bad. I decided to move kind of out into the country into a larger house, um, and couldn't sell it. You know, just the price kept dropping and dropping and dropping. So I eventually rented it out for several years before selling it. Now, background as a pharmacist. I had no entrepreneurial, you know, background growing up, but just knew I wanted a little bit more than just living paycheck to paycheck. And then, I couldn't sell the house and eventually rented it out just to cover the mortgage because I was making two mortgages for a while as it, was on the market. And, that the light bulb went off.
Ha! It went off. And what was that light bulb that went off? What as your wheels started turning in your mind? What were the possibilities in your mind?
At first, it was basically like, I could outsource my debt. So, that $1,200-$1,300 mortgage payment was covered by the tenant. I didn't have to come out of my pocket for it. And then, a year or two later, my mom, I was heading to Vegas to go mountain climbing on Mount Whitney, and she had mentioned, picking up some real estate flyers while I was there in Vegas because the market was so bad. And I was like, whatever, and I didn't get in any. And then she, I think, had talked to a couple realtors at the time, and we went that fall and purchased a property out there. And, I think that's kind of, when the light bulb really went off because I went back about 6 months later and purchased the second property out there and, kind of just getting started there with a single family.
As many of us do. But what were you thinking at the time? Like when you said, "Oh, I can do this." Now you could cover the mortgage, but what did you have a broader vision at that point? What you think you might be able to do with real estate, or what was your what did you try to do with real estate?
Basically just trying to create passive income. If I could do, one and, clear $200 or $300 a month, I was happy at that point. I don't think I had the big picture kind of rolled up into one yet. It maybe took me a couple years to kind of get that into play, but I knew, $200 or $300 a month, plus the benefits of the tax deductions and things like that, were kind of in my mind initially.
So it was just generating some extra income for you, which you thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
At what point did real estate start becoming a little more strategic to you and your family?
I got married in 2015, and at that point, I had just closed on my first duplex. Another aha moment. We had renovated the basement. It had some flood damage, and we had renovated the basement. But in the meantime, while it was vacant and we were looking for tenants, the upstairs was rented, and it was paying the rent and then some. And I thought, when that basement gets rented, that's all going to be mine. Um, and kind of think in late 2015, we closed on two more single families. And then sometime in early 2016, I heard you on, I think maybe Joe Fairless's podcast. And I think I texted, whatever number and got a link to your short little program. And I think within a month or so, I had taken the long course with the syndicated deal analyzer. And at that point, I was like, okay, multifamily. It definitely. I think I'd learned with the duplex. That was the way I wanted to go, kind of scaling things up a little bit bigger.
So when you thought scaling things up, you obviously liked the way that single family houses were going. What at the time when you decided to go to multifamily and you bought my course and my program and you started educating yourself, what was your? It's fun, it's interesting how goals evolve, right? You think one thing, you get into it, and then all of a sudden your goals evolve and typically expand. So at the time when you decided to go into multifamily, what was your goal with it at the time?
Um, Probably just ramping things up more. Rather than spending 90 days with the bank, submitting pay stub every couple of weeks, bank statements, letters of explanation. I figured, with a multifamily, I could just get 2 units at once, and I'd go through the same trouble, but I would just get 2 at one time, or 3 at one time, or 4 at one time at that point, rather than just getting 1 and then starting the whole process over again.
Right. So you figure it's the same amount of work to do a few more
Yeah.
units. Were you ever concerned about, experience or lack of money, or what were your main challenges that you wrapped around your mind around multifamily, starting with duplexes and then getting progressively larger? What was holding you back at the time? What were you struggling with?
Probably that first year and a half we were married, we worked real heavily on paying some debt off. My wife, she had some school loans, various other debt, and I think we paid about $35,000 or $40,000 off that first year and a half of being married. So that was kind of one thing holding me back. I wasn't necessarily worried about the experience. I knew kind of if I bought well and I had a ground team, had a property manager, had a good realtor, had an insurance agent kind of lined up. My experience in Vegas those first couple of years, being completely inexperienced, and having such a good experience with that, I knew that I could duplicate it here, locally, or in another city if I needed to.
Yeah, so you then started setting about looking for not huge multifamily, but progressively larger. Can you talk about kind of like your some of your first deals that you've done, and how you found them, and how you financed them?
Um, Probably late 2016, we closed on the duplex. Somehow I had found Cleveland, Ohio, as a market. We just, living here locally in Central Virginia, the property values are way higher. It takes a really good deal to cash flow. And somewhere that summer of 2015 kind of found Cleveland. And we went back in 2016 and bought the duplex. And I think I finally really got motivated early in 2017 to kind of get off my butt and get working. I redid our home equity line and, pulled a couple of things together. And about that same time, I found a little local bank that I built a relationship with, which they, instead of taking, 90 days to complete a loan, they can do it in about 40, and just a lot simpler process, a lot friendlier. And that was really, finding that bank and then kind of getting my stuff together with my home equity line. About that time, a large portfolio came open. My realtor there, he emailed me. He said, hey, these are going to hit the market in, in the next week or so. Take a look at this stuff. There was several quads, triplexes, duplexes. There were a couple of 6-unit properties. I eventually closed on the first, with the commercial line of mortgages. I closed on a quad there, and then went back last year and then did 3 more duplexes. And in the meantime, sold our Vegas properties and used some of that money to 1031 into these properties late 2017.
That's fabulous. So you just started accumulating some things in Cleveland. I think you did a deal in Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah, we closed this spring. I got together some partners, not a true syndication, but a 25, 25, 25, 25 partnership. We closed on a 6-unit there, and I've recently changed jobs, so I'm going to have access to my 401k soon. And I've emailed the broker who we kind of developed a relationship there, and he's sending me properties now like, hey, this might be something you're looking for, which is kind of nice. Rather than me having to track him down, he's emailing me stuff, which is a change. As you build a relationship with the broker, things get a little easier.
Let's talk about, you said it's not a true syndication versus a partnership. Can we talk about the difference? We always talk about syndicating, where you're doing a private placement memorandum, a bunch of passive investors, and you actually have 2 or 3, investors in the deal. You guys are kind of sort of equals. Can you talk about how you structure that and why you like it or why you don't like that?
So there's 4 of us. 2 of the partners are very passive, just busy with kids, with business, with work. So they're extremely passive. The other couple that's involved in the partnership and myself are the co-managers. They have a little bit of experience with properties themselves. I have some property, experience obviously myself, but we kind of make call the shots. I'm not saying nobody gets to vote, but we'll, the day-to-day stuff, the little, hey, the locks need to be changed. Yeah, just go ahead and do it. We don't contact the passive partners really for those. But I'm not sure I would structure it the same way next time. As the deal closed, I kind of found myself doing most of the work, the legwork, with the lending process, and I was there for the inspection. I think, if I did it again, I would probably definitely syndicate where I'm the one kind of, controlling the deal. But
now, how did you meet these three other investors? How did that come about?
One of them was the best man in my wedding.
That helps.
Yeah. So he's one of the passive guys. Another of the passive guys was the best man at the other partner's wedding. I've never truly met him. I've talked to him on the phone, but I've never met him in person. And the other partner, the couple, he's my chiropractor and his wife. So I've known them for about 10 years.
Yeah, so you've known these guys, but it sounds to me like you've been talking about real estate with them for a while.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
You didn't call them up one day recently and going, hey, by the way, I'm doing these deals. Are you in? Right. So we talk a lot about that a lot, about raising money, is that you got to start this conversation like right now, because sometimes it takes people a while to wrap their heads around the fact that you're now out there. They know you as the guy at the pharmacy or whatever. And if they don't know you as the guy with real estate, it takes them a while to kind of get comfortable with that. And so It sounds to me like, is that right? Have you talked to him a while about real estate in general?
Yeah. One of the best men at my wedding, he was a pharmacist. He actually, the job I just left, he was the one who called me and said, hey, we have an opening, 10 years ago. So, I've talked to him over the years about real estate, and, he's been like, hey, when you get something that you're, you think you want to partner with, let me know. So, a year ago, we kind of started this partnership. It took us a little while to find the property we were looking for. And, but yeah, just everybody that knows me knows that I'm involved in real estate, whether it's somebody else telling them or me telling them.
So you've gone kind of the small multifamily route, duplexes, some 6 here, how many units do you have right now?
16 in our personal portfolio, and then 6 more with the partnership. So 22 total. That's
fabulous. And now you're still working your job. And what is your, I don't, I say your financial position, I should say, is it a job that you need or that you want at this point?
It's a job I want. I enjoy what I do. Part of me is somewhat OCD. So, being a pharmacist is a job where you OCD's applauded. So, I went from 36 hours a week recently down to a part-time job where, like I told my boss a couple of weeks ago, like, hey, I need to leave early today because I'm recording a podcast. Tomorrow, I have a meeting at the bank. So, I'll leave about the same time tomorrow too. And it's kind of cool. So, I went from working every third weekend. I've worked every third weekend for the last 10, 12, 13 years. And I went from working every third weekend to now, I have one weekend I work in August, but they basically asked me, hey, would you be willing to cover this weekend? But I don't work weekends anymore, which is kind of nice.
So you enjoy the activity, which is why you're doing it. A longer term, what do you envision yourself doing?
Longer term, just doing more of the same. I think I'd like to get larger properties. At one time, rather than getting a 6-unit or a 4-unit or, a duplex, getting into larger multifamily. The process to close is the same process, you would use to close with a 6-unit versus a 26-unit. The amount of effort is pretty much the same. Due diligence is a little bit more involved. The inspection is a little bit more, but.
Well, that's true. But one of the main problems, Aaron, is raising more money. So.
Yes.
How are you going to tackle that?
I've got a couple friends. Over time, I've ran into people in bigger pockets. I've got a couple friends who I've been introduced to by mutual friends. We'll sit down and talk real estate every now and then. Our local real estate group, I'm involved in that. I think at some point, when I get something on the horizon, just go into these folks that I know and saying, hey, who do you know? Or if you're interested, but, maybe putting a couple of those people together in a syndication.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems to me what you're doing is you're constantly blabbing about real estate. That's kind of my sense. And I think that's a key lesson for anyone listening to this stuff is that's what you got to do. You're not really out there raising money per se. You're just blabbing about it, and then people kind of go, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. And then that's where you have discussions. So that's what you're doing. And so you feel pretty confident you can raise some money through those conversations you've had.
Yeah, I do. I've had one friend kind of introduce me to 3 or 4 people. They've closed deals themselves. They're looking to expand their business. And then, I've got people, I've made a list of folks that I haven't even necessarily talked to yet. I haven't seen them in a while. But when I do see them or run into them, I expect to, maybe bring up real estate at that point.
All right, so you're glossing over some of the details, but my sense is you're being very intentional about these things. You're writing stuff down, right?
Yeah.
We talk about creating these mind maps of different, social groups that you're in, and listing the names in each of those groups, and then, reaching out to them in a natural way. But you're not talking about, sports and the weather. You're catching up, and then you're gently steering the conversation about how excited you are about real estate. Right? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, and a lot of my friends know that I recently kind of went part-time in the pharmacy, so that creates another level of intrigue.
That's crazy though. So describe to people listening to this stuff what that is like, right? Because a lot of us we're trying to do what you're trying to do, and we want some flexibility in our work schedule. In fact, we want to actually control our work schedule. And it's interesting, even the people that are, financially free, what I find is that we're not sitting there on the beach doing nothing. We're actually working really hard, but we're doing it at our terms. And so you're working now on your terms. But what does that feel like? Can you describe that feeling, now where you have some flexibility versus before where you had to be at work on the weekends or you had to be at work at a certain time? What's that like?
Well, have you ever seen The Shawshank Redemption?
Yes, I have.
So when Andy Dufresne breaks out of prison, he crawls through the sewer pipes and he jumps out into the creek and he's like washing himself off and it's raining.
Yeah.
And, he's just happy to be free. It kind of felt like that the first couple of days. Walking out of work that last night, I was kind of like, freedom. But, I'm kind of going through a withdrawal a little bit too because I'm used to checking my work email. I don't have to do that anymore. I'm free in the evenings. I used to work like 2 nights a week till 9 o'clock and then drive home and get here at 9:30. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to the gym a little bit more. I'm actually a little bit bored from time to time. So it's kind of nice.
Interesting. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens. And my observation is when I have conversations like this stuff, most of our brains are consumed by 90% work and then 10% like family. And then when you take the work out, you have this sense of confusion about you. You have this vacuum in your brain. And it's a great, I love watching this problem because you're like, well, I'm a little bored. I don't know what I should do with myself. And there's a sense of confusion. I just love that because people invariably come up with really good ideas. Once the confusion goes on for a few months and the boredom goes on, you challenge yourself to new things. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with you, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, you're exactly right. I'm kind of a little bit confused. I'm used to putting out fires and, thinking, how do I manage these 15 people I'm in charge of? And, right now I'm not having to worry about that.
That's fabulous. Yeah, no, look, almost everyone listening to this wants to experience your sense of confusion, Aaron. So it's a great sense of confusion. And it's amazing. You'll find how inspired people will be by your story. So speaking of which, again, the focus, what I'm all about is helping people do their first deal so they can become financial free. What is your advice to someone who wants to do what you're doing? Obviously using hindsight as a benefit to you, having to work out and figure things out as you go along. But I mean, if you could sit someone down and say, hey, you know what, from path A to B, here's what I think is the fastest way to do it. What would you say?
I would say mainly just get started. do something. You think 10 years ago they brought the first iPad out, and you didn't have a video camera. They released a second edition. They put some upgrades in it, made it more user friendly. If they would have waited for everything to be perfect, we still wouldn't have an iPad. There has to be a first version. So if you're going out and, just kind of doing that first deal, if you're a little scared, have somebody help you. Have somebody look over the deal with you that's involved in real estate. Connect with your local real estate group. Build a network. That's probably the second thing I would recommend. Just be around people who are like-minded. Whether be a local real estate group. Develop relationships with your banks locally. That helps. But just getting started is the biggest thing.
It is getting started. And in the realm of getting started, what do you advise people to do? I mean, and the reason I ask is a lot of people talk about taking massive action, and I think that overwhelms a lot of people. So when you talk about taking action, can you be a little more specific?
Probably, obviously you're going to need money at some point. Somehow, it may not be your money. It may be someone else's money, but you're going to need to line up some way to fund your down payment. And then, maybe have some reserves for the first 6 months or so, just because things go wrong at all. They always do. Nothing, like I said, nothing's perfect. But probably having that lined up, the bank's going to want, initially as you're building that relationship, they're going to want some, financial background on yourself or whoever the group is that's borrowing money from the bank. So maybe start gathering that. Have that handy and organized. But that would probably be the first thing I'd recommend, just making sure, you've got the funding down so you can get things rolling.
Right. And if someone doesn't have the funding, what do you suggest that they do?
Maybe look for a partner or partners. You may not be good at the funding part. Maybe you're good at finding the properties, or you've got maybe a way of or you don't mind searching the MLS for hours at a time. But, just network. If you've got a deal, somebody's going to go out and help you buy it.
Yeah, I mean, having that deal is so valuable because people with money, their main problem is the deal flow, right? And so if you can come to them with a deal, I will say that the money really is not a problem. If you have a deal that's actually good, it is extremely rare that the money does not follow. I thought I'd almost witnessed an exception to that rule. One of our students almost didn't close on their deal because they couldn't raise the money. It was a pretty good deal, and they ended up closing on it anyway. And that was a real nail biter for us. And but typically the money will follow. The biggest challenge typically is finding the good deals. So getting good at finding deals. But we find that in parallel is the best way to do it, like you've been doing. You've been finding the deals in parallel, and then in parallel you're talking to people about potentially investing with you. And that's probably the best advice. Any other guidance you can provide to people who are just starting to get started?
Maybe just taking a look, whatever market you're investing in, whether it be your local market or if you're investing from afar, just be familiar with the market. Look at, sign up on Redfin. They'll send you email updates every day, or Zillow. They'll send you updates as far as the new listings go or price changes. Just be familiar with the market, because if something pops up and it's $30,000 overpriced, if you don't have any experience, you might say, oh, it's a beautiful house, but you don't realize you're overpaying. Where if something comes up that's $30,000 less, you'll know, okay, that's about right. But as you look at more and more listings and deals, your ability to figure out what's good and what's bad will make things a lot easier.
The thing that you've done is obviously very worthwhile. You've gone from essentially having to work to wanting to work, and doing however you want it. So it's a very worthwhile thing. One of the main challenges that many of us have is that it's not a 30-day success thing, right? It takes sometimes months, sometimes even years to succeed. How were you able to keep yourself going over that time? What did you do to keep yourself on track and motivated?
I use a variety of methods. We have a chalkboard up in our kitchen. I've had 20 units written up on this chalkboard with a circle around it for about 3 years. So every time I go in the kitchen, my wife writes the menu for the week, and if we're going to dinner somewhere, if we're going to some activities, she'll write it on the chalkboard each week. So I've had to look at that for the last 3 years. I have an app on my phone called Habit List. It basically, I go through each day and check off little habits as I do them each day. So each day I read 20 minutes. It may not always be a real estate book, but it's probably 60%, 70% of the books I read are about real estate or someone who has been successful in real estate. So I've constantly got that on the mind. And again, just, looking at deals all the time. I get probably 10 emails a day about new listings and price changes and things like that. And, I'm just always checking those out to kind of keep an eye open for things.
That's awesome. So you mentioned some of your habits. Let's drill down on some of that. So you're reading 20 minutes a day. You're analyzing deals. How many deals are you analyzing, and what other habits do you have that you do each day?
I'm probably looking at 15 listings a day, at least on most days. Some of the habits on there, I pray daily. Reading 20 minutes a day. I'll read my Bible. I have to tell my wife I love her. Even if I'm mad at her, I still have to tell her each day. I'm doing 45 push-ups every day. I'm not always faithful with that, but 4 out of 7 days and during the week, I'll get that done. And just various other little things, but just odds and ends like that.
Yeah, love it. That's fantastic. So Habit List, the app, check that out. And kind of keep you on track. And the other thing that you're doing is you're obviously you're working together with your wife, and that's very important. And you put this goal up there for everybody to see, which is also important. What is it about that 20 units that was so meaningful to you and your wife?
I knew with about 20 units, it made me $300 a door. And a couple of the single family early on, they were maybe make $200 a door, but the multifamily are around $300 a door. I knew at 20 of those, I could basically duplicate my work income. And at that point, I've been planning for especially the last year as I've kind of ramped things up. I knew it, once we get to 20 units or so, that I would, have an option to kind of go part-time at work. And honestly, we hit that goal in May. I wasn't planning on leaving work. I had no plans on making any changes. And then, another pharmacy local, I've known the guy probably for 10 years, called me up out of the blue and said, hey, we have these couple of these positions open. Would you be interested? And I was like, maybe I would. And I drove to the interview thinking to myself, I'm wasting their time and I'm wasting my time. There's no way in the world I'm going to take this job. But I got there and had a good feeling about it. And I guess the rest is history.
That is awesome. Well, congratulations again on making this huge milestone. And thank you again for sharing your experience. What's the best way, Aaron, for people to connect with you?
I'm on Bigger Pockets. You can find me there. You can also email me. I'm A Howell, which is HOWELL, the number 7 at hotmail.com. I check that thing. Obviously I'm getting listings every day, so I'm on there quite often. But that'd probably be the best way to get in touch with me.
Yeah, fabulous. Again, thank you so much, Aaron, for sharing your story and inspiring our listeners. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I want to leave you with 3 next things to do. I'll give you a quick tour of those, and I'll tell you how to do them. Step number 1 is to download my free ebook, The Secret to Raising Money to Buy Your First Apartment Building Deal. It is an awesome ebook full of tips for raising money and how to do that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I put out new videos all the time, and I'd hate for you to miss it. And number 3 is to watch the next video in line. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to click on the first thing, which is to download the ebook. That'll open up a new tab. The video will stop playing. You're going to get the ebook, and then go back to this video, and then click on number 2, right, which is to subscribe on the channel. That'll open a new tab, and then you can go back to the third one and just click on the next video in line. All right, so hope you find that helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.